Thank you for joining us now. I am Frank Omalape. We'll begin from the Federal Capital Territory, where Nigeria's inflation rate report is in the market, accelerating to a new 17-year high of 21.09% in October 2022, marking 0.32% point increase from 20.77% recorded in September. This is according to the Consumer Price Index report released by the National Bureau of Statistics. Food inflation also surged to 23.72% in the review month from 23.34% in the previous month, while the coal inflation rate rose to 17.76% from 17.6%. According to the NBS, the rise in the food inflation rate was caused by increases in prices of bread and cereals, food products, potatoes, yams, and other tubers, and oil and fat. On the other hand, the highest increases in the core basket were recorded in prices of gas, liquid fuel, passenger transport by air, solid fuel, and vehicles per part. And now to more news stories now. Nigeria struggled to exceed the 1 million barrels per day oil production mark in October, a feat it hadn't achieved in the last month. The Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission (NUPRC) data obtained indicated that Nigeria drilled 1.014 million barrels per day for the month under review, exceeding production for August, which was 972,394 barrels per day, and September pegged at 937,766 barrels per day. In all, the country produced about 31.449 million barrels of oil in October, as opposed to 28.13 million barrels in September and 30.14 million barrels in August. The month also saw the production of 6.69 million barrels volume of condensate, raising total production to 38.1 million barrels for last month. The total of crude oil, blended condensate as well as unblended condensate was 1.23 million barrels per day during the month under review. And now, like in previous month, Angola, Algeria, and Libya again pushed Nigeria to the fourth position in October, as Africa's biggest oil producer struggles with sundry issues which have hobbled its capacity to meet the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries oil quota. While in the month under review, Algeria drew 1.06 million barrels per day. Angola produced 1.05 million. Libya's output was 1.16 million, while Nigeria's oil production stood at 1.02 million barrels per day. Although Nigeria added 77,000 barrels per day in October, the OPEC figures released in its latest monthly oil market report on Monday indicated that Nigeria's roughly 1 million barrels per day is also a far cry from its average of 1.49 million in 2020, a COVID year, and 1.32 million in 2021. On the economic front, OPEC stated that Nigeria's economic outlook has been impacted by the devastating rains and floods that affected 31 of Nigeria's 36 states and has resulted in a significant loss of land, lives, and livelihoods. And in the meantime, the impact of the 2022 floods on agriculture and food production has been devastating and has resulted in the loss of crops, livestock, and other essential agricultural infrastructures. The unprecedented losses have taken a toll on the federal government's effort towards ensuring food security and a setback to the country's desire to drive goal 2 of the Sustainable Development Goals towards ending hunger by 2030. And now, similarly, farmers and investors have suffered huge losses as floods have destroyed thousands of hectares of farmlands and food crops across the country as a result of the recent flooding. According to a report obtained from the National Emergency Management Agency, 33 states out of 36 in Nigeria have so far experienced the 2022 floods, with many of the affected states relying heavily on food production as means of livelihood. And now, to further discuss the impacts of flood on farming, we have Debo Adeniyi, Executive Director, Center for Global Solutions and Sustainability Services. Thank you for joining us on Business Now.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Now, yes, talk to us about the impact of recent flooding across the state that was recorded. About 33 states out of 36 in Nigeria were affected, massively affected across the state. So talk to us about the impact of these on livelihood, and most especially farming activities.
Yes, flooding in itself, as one of the effect of climate change, is something that nobody prays for. It came recently and happened recently in Nigeria, where the flood washes away the topsoil, which is the richest part of the soil, and which contains the organic matter and other crop nutrients and deposits. So when it happens, it will wash away that topsoil. In terms of farming, you won't have that quality soil to germinate your crops. Which eventually will lead to reduction in the soil's fertility and its sustainable use. The flooding in itself affects several aspects of agricultural production and productivities. And in many instances, as it's happened recently across 33 states, crops were being unrecoverable after the flood occurs. And the areas that are hit by flood or riverine flood, livestock, we saw livestock, people losing livestock, hundreds of thousands of livestock that are lost, or some of them are displaced, including fish in the water bodies. We've seen, especially in ponds, whose structures are not strong, and grazing land for livestock are even lost as well. We even see cows, running helter-skelter for their lives, floating on waters, trying to, survive. A lot of farming products were, damaged across the country. So most times when livestock is not completely lost, they get affected, by numbers of diseases due to exposures to the flood water, which is unclean and naturally likely to, be contaminated with disease pathogens. So we listen to a lot of farmers now complaining that even after the flood has gone, some of their livestock are still dying because they contacted, quite a number of diseases. And from research we made recently, it also revealed that the flood prevented root crop expansion. It's led to premature harvest. A lot of farmers were harvesting some of their crops prematurely. Some cassavas, we saw them being rotting across board. We saw yams being rotting, and we saw tomatoes perishing because the roads were totally cut off. Farmers couldn't move product from the north to south, because there was nowhere to pass. Trailers parking across borders or on the road and waiting for the flood to subside while they move. And after the whole thing.
Okay, let me quickly come in here if you can hear me, Debo. Yes, of course. This I know nations of the world, every government of the nation try to rise up to tackle the impacts of climate change. Did you think that these took us unaware or unprepared? It is something that we're unprepared for.
Climate change in itself, when the impact occurs, it naturally gets you unaware, one, despite preparation. It needs robust and holistic preparation. I think we need to get it right. Solving weather-based events requires first and foremost an analysis of causative factor. There are several factors that will cause flooding. Are we really getting it right? Then the planning for preventions and mitigation follows. In a case where flooding is being caused by, for example, plastic bottles, like you have bottled waters, the plastic waste, and all of that. Solving that We require you to go clean the drainages, sensitize the people, and ensuring that these plastics are not blocking waterways. So farmers are just looking at there's flooding everywhere, whereas it was the plastics causing all of this. So first and foremost, analysis. If you get our analysis right, to detect what are those causative factors, and that will help a lot. There are different even technologies and mitigation strategies that the government needs to really put in place or adopt to curb the impact of flooding. And some of these techs are used in climate modeling, even and forecasting, as well as flood detection. I think we are not doing much in terms of flood detection. We are not doing much in terms of forecasting for flooding. We are not doing much in terms of climate modeling. All these things are very crucial for our government to put in place. Alongside these technologies like risk assessment and emergency planning, I think that area we are a bit poor. Similar technology like flood proofing, dry flood forecasting, flood insurance are key areas that even farmers needs to really look at, so that when these issues happen, they are being protected.
I know flood insurance is another, a bottle of conversation, or will I say, yes, start of conversation to this whole issue. Yes, I asked that question because I know that.
Here again.
Can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Debo. Can you hear me? So I was asking you. Yes, I know that.
Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me, Mr. Debo? I was asking you. To give us, yes, I asked that question because I know that a lot of other, government of nations also do something to prevent against, massive impacts of climate change on their territory as well. Now, so the money has been raised. There are a lot of funds. Government is raising funds through green bond, issuing of green bonds, and all of that. So, what I know you've said much of what we should be doing as well. But what do you think we can learn from these other nations who seem ready for the impact of climate change?
Yes, first and foremost, what we should learn, as we have seen in other climes, other developed nations, that their government are enforcing regulations on single-use plastics, which clog drainages and waterways and leading to flooding. You see, government has not really been serious in terms of that areas. Let's forget about, let's even put aside the dam that was opened recently. You open dam once in a while, even once in a year, or once in 2 years, once in 3 years. But when rain falls, these plastics that are blocking our drainage, it happens all the time. And these are things that mostly affect farmlands, affect communities. Regulations should be very stiff, and enforcement should be there from the part of the government in terms of single-use plastics, which clog drainages and waterways. That is very key. One, deforestation. We've seen how government over there are clamoring.
Let's try to wrap because of our time.
Yes,
because of our time. Let's wrap it up with this one. For issue of forestation and other factors, we're going to talk about that. But let's wrap up with this. Knowledge. Just a moment. Let's wrap up with this now. In the meantime, what should we be looking at so as to reduce the impact? Recently we witnessed a situation where some people have to be evacuated in a community in Bayelsa State as a result of flooding. Their community was swept by floods and all that. So in the immediate, what do you think the government needs to do to address the impact of this climate change, of this flooding on livelihoods?
Well, infrastructure is very key, both in rural areas and urban areas, which should be enhanced. Land use planning, designated floodways, reservoirs and barriers, such as canals, dams. We need it very urgently. Flood walls. There's what we call flood walls. Government can, put in place. Should be solidly built and maintained by agencies responsible. Maybe, for example, Federal Ministry of Water Resources or the River Basin Development Authority. They should look at all of this. Okay, I watched the documentary where Cameroon said they built a dam and Nigeria did not build its own counterpart dam. And that was why if they release the waters and it caused flooding in our area. So government should try as much as possible build the dams, the canals, the reservoirs, the barriers. If we have all of these things, then flooding will be contained.
All right. I think we should leave it there for now. Thank you so much, Debo, for coming on the program. Thank you for your time on Business Now.
Thank you so much.
And now to more stories. An expert has called for more regulation in the cryptocurrency market to allow more effective trading and acceptance in Nigeria amid the current bear market. Speaking on iBrandTV's Business Breakfast on Monday, founder Crypto Masterclass Tola Faduwegbe noted that the crisis brought on by FTX shows a challenge. However, according to him, the current market trend was not new since the asset class is prone to volatility, adding that this can be resolved by proper regulation.
This won't be the last time we are going to see the market thrown into chaos like this. I have been here since 2016, and I can tell you that we've seen several events. Okay, we are going to be witnessing exchange acts. We're going to be witnessing issues with liquidity. We're going to be witnessing so many things we saw with so many exchanges. So this isn't going to be the last time a thing like this will happen. Negative events will always come that will throw the market into chaos, but we can't tell what will happen next. And in order for a thing like this to be mitigated in the future, is the more reason why regulation should come in very fast. Personally, I want regulation, and I want it now. It's not a matter of, okay, we've seen the first exchange trying to establish a prominence in the space as the top exchange. Binance was not here in 2016. Okay, it was Bitres, Poloniex, and the rest of them. But out of the blues, Binance became one cryptocurrency world. So there was a time when this social app Clubhouse came out newly. I was on a call with CZ and other crypto influencers. He said something about nothing is too big that it can't fail, and nothing is too small that it can become big. So Binance is aware that the top spot should be maintained. Otherwise, of course, anyone can take that top spot. So what we are seeing now is not a matter of how long will it last. It will continue to reoccur.
And away from there now, the Debt Management Office has disclosed that it has been difficult for Nigeria to borrow from the international markets as a global lender, and investors are shunning countries with Category B economic ratings. According to the Director General of the DMO, Patience Oniha, Nigeria must jet up its revenue drive while looking for alternative sources of funds internationally. He says, and I quote, "We really can't survive like this," she stated. Oniha, while appearing before the House of Representatives Committee on AIDS, Loans and Debt Management to defend the DMO's 2023 budget, noted that the federal government has not been able to meet its external borrowing target, noting that it was now looking at lenders in the United States and Europe. Speaking on debt service, the DMO boasted that the government must pay attention to the percentage of deficit in its annual budget. And now the Nigerian government said it is working on implementing the Vision 2050 report soon as a replacement for the Vision 2020 agenda, which expired 2 years ago. This was disclosed by the Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed at the 20th Nigerian Economic Summit on Monday in Abuja. Ahmed noted that Nigeria Agenda 2050 seeks to increase the country's per capita gross domestic product to $33,000 US, adding that the federal government is finalizing the Nigeria Agenda 2050 to succeed Vision 2020 after founding the National Development Plan. She noted that Nigeria is currently in the second year of its National Development Plan 2021 to 2025, which replaced the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan of 2017 to 2020.